Hello, in this video we'll talk about my iPhone 14 Pro Max that I have been using for the past couple of weeks. So I bought this phone on 4th March of this year and have been using it for a couple of days, and I would like to share some pros and cons regarding this device. So first we'll talk about the display. So the display is, I think, around quad HD resolution, like it's between 1080p and quad HD resolution with a 2000 nits of peak brightness, and it supports Dolby Vision HDR. Like honestly, this display is excellent. Like I have no complaints. Like this display gets bright enough under harsh sunlight, and it actually does not dim under extreme lighting scenarios. This was the issue that I faced on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, but this issue seems to be resolved on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Apart from that, the thing I don't like about this phone, like about this display, is basically the dynamic island. I sometimes feel that whenever I watch content on this phone, the dynamic island hinders on videos which are around 18:9 aspect ratio. So if you're someone which is sensitive about it, you should probably not buy this phone. Honestly, I got used to it after some time, even though it cuts into the content. I just basically just full screen the video content and I watch it without any hesitation now. So yeah, it's an excellent display, but dynamic island kinda like obstructs the video viewing experience. Now let's talk about the design and build. So this phone is built incredibly well. Like this is, in fact, I was using an iPhone 13 Pro Max for the past 1 year, around when I bought the iPhone 13 Pro Max, and I never got used to its form factor and weight. However, it is different for this iPhone 14 Pro Max. I will tell you why. So this phone has rounded the edges, like it's still like a boxy design, but this curvature around the rounded ring, this is more circular instead of being flat. Like flat in the sense that S23 Ultra has quite a boxy edge, right? This is more circular along this direction. So I feel that Apple did a great job in rounding the edges properly so that it fits into my hand really well. Okay, so yeah, now I got used to the form factor of this phone and the weight density quite well, which was a big miss on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, especially with its slightly boxier edge frame. Okay, so overall the design is quite incredible. The only complaint I have with this design, I think there are a couple of complaints. Let me address them one by one. First is this camera design, this camera module. So this camera module captures a lot of dust in it. So this is something that Apple needs to like kinda be wary of, because they're gonna increase the camera lenses more in terms of depth perception and size. So I think we cannot go bigger than this. Like at max we can go up till iPhone 15 lineup in terms of camera module housing, but if we go any bigger than that, I guess the dust situation around the camera lens will get more worse. Okay, that's the first complaint. Second complaint that I have with design is the lightning port. Like honestly, Apple, this is not like, it's kinda weird that you're still providing us with a lightning port. I just hope that you change to USB-C port to the iPhone 15 and 15 Pro models in this year. And the last thing is lack of SIM tray. Like I know guys, eSIM is the future, but I honestly feel that I love iPhone 13 lineup for this scenario. Like you can add up to 7 eSIMs and one physical SIM. Like imagine the amount of like options and compatibility and feature set you have across eSIMs. Like I can have 7 eSIMs. Imagine I can have eSIM from United States, a physical SIM slot for my Indian region, and a eSIM for Europe. Like it is so amazing. Like it's a emphatic It's a amazing technology, but I would still love it to have at least one physical SIM slot. Okay, these are the three design flaws that I observed in this phone. Now we'll talk about the speakers. The speakers on this phone are quite incredible. They are probably the best on a smartphone. I would argue the iPhone 14 Pro Max and the OnePlus devices that I used previously are some of the best in device speakers I've heard on phones. I would give the title to the iPhones to have the best speakers, followed by the OnePlus, which is the very close second. The speakers have quite a huge amount of depth to it, and they don't rattle at the high pitched sound voices and frequencies. Now that we have done talking about the speakers, we'll talk about the cameras. So the selfie on this camera is improved. It captures an amazing selfie, and I would argue it is quite better than your iPhone 13 and 13 Pro Max. You should give it a chance to take a selfie, and it is very, very good in that sense. I would still argue that the S23 Ultra has a better selfie cam than the iPhones and even the Pixels for that matter. But this is quite good. This is something that I will say is a good selfie in my opinion, like a selfie camera in my opinion. The three camera lenses here, they are quite good. I love the main camera. To be honest, I mostly use the main camera on this phone, and it captures very nice pictures. It does get a contrasty now after they added the 48 MP camera. It takes more contrasty pictures like the Pixel rather than vivid pictures on the S23 Ultra, but it is still one of the better camera options. It is probably the third best photography camera after Samsung and Pixel. Like it is quite good. It's not something whenever I capture a picture with this phone, I'm never disappointed. The only issue I have with this camera is sometimes it messes up the HDR, but for that you must, I guess, get used to it or hope Apple fixes it with a future software update. But yeah, the HDR performance on this phone is not that great. The ultra wide is quite. I honestly have a firm opinion that the ultra wide on the iPhone needs some sort of an improvement because they are using the same camera hardware, even though they're tweaking the software and making it good. But it sometimes feels that the ultra wide camera is not sharp and does not capture like as good of colors as the main camera lens. The telephoto is one of the best in the industry. I would argue it is as good as the S23 Ultra because it has a gradual portrait landscaping. Of course, it is probably the second best portrait lens after Samsung. It is way better than the Pixel, and probably this and the OnePlus come close in terms of portrait photography. To be honest, I have seen a lot more Android phones in 2023 that capture amazing portraits. OnePlus 11 is one of them, Xiaomi 13 Pro is another one. So, yeah, portrait game is actually quite strong across the competition. Only the Pixel needs to improve on portrait photography. Now, in terms of video, I will say that iPhones are the best. Like, it's hands down. I agree that Samsung has a better video in low light than the iPhone because iPhone has a tendency to add noise on the skin when capturing videos in low light. But in terms of natural landscape videography in low light, Samsung beats iPhone. Like it's not even close. Like it is so interesting that we call this the best videography phone. It is, but it is only best videography phone for bright lighting conditions. But when the lighting changes, I believe S23 Ultra and this phone come close. So yeah, and even the selfie video is quite amazing. But I would argue that the selfie camera video on this phone and even the Samsung is the same. Like it's not gonna be a deciding factor. So yeah, now I will talk about some of the X features, like flagship features that this phone was promoted. So first is the dynamic island. To be honest, I've used a dynamic island only for changing my songs. Now, one con I have for with this dynamic island is whenever I pause the music, the music in the island stays for 10 seconds and then it just stops, like it just disappears out of nowhere. So whoever said that the dynamic island helps in multitasking needs to like get their facts right, because whenever I pause a music like a onboard playing music album, it just stays there for 10 seconds and then disappears. So then what's the point of having a dynamic island and calling it like a multitasking tool? That's one of the issues. And second, I said that it interrupts with the video experience. To be honest, I would have preferred Apple to go the dewdrop notch implementation that the Android phones have instead of going with this dynamic island. You will feel special about the dynamic island for the first 2 days, and then you will like kind of feel like, oh, it's just a pill. It's not gonna disturb your content viewing experience in terms of vertical portrait videos, but it will definitely hinder your experience when you're watching OTT platforms videos like on Netflix and YouTube. Now I will talk about the always on display. To be honest, I don't use an always on display. I just find it quite distracting. But Apple has a good always on display. It's as good as Samsung. So yeah, I would give Apple points for that, but I would still like to argue that why is this an iPhone 14 Pro exclusive? I mean, I don't get any point for this. Like, it does not require an insane amount of hardware to implement it across the baseline iPhone 14 lineup, the 13 lineup, and the 12 lineup. Like, honestly, they should roll down these features like for the 13 and the 12 lineup as well. So yeah, I'm pretty neutral about the always on display because I never use it. But I guess you guys, some of you may find it useful. So yeah. Now these there is a feature that they marketed which is called as the action mode. Honestly, I kind of forget about these features whenever I'm using the phone because whenever I capture video, I want an instant video on my phone. So yeah, this is not something that I used, but yeah, but you can see a couple of videos about action mode on YouTube. So yeah. Other than that, this phone is quite good. So the main biggest bummer I find about this phone is the USB-C port, followed by only eSIM on the US model, and probably the dynamic island hindering in the video experience. These are the most three notable cons, and there are some recommendations that I would like to give Apple in terms of improving their phone. First is they need to fix the HDR on photography. Okay. Second is please give us the chargers back in the box. Like honestly, this trend is kind of tiring, so I would like the chargers to come back on the phone boxes. And other than that, this phone is honestly quite perfect. I would still like Apple to change this camera module like built. I'm not saying the layout. The layout can remain the same. I don't have any issues with it. But I want this inner camera lenses to be like matte finish, like they have on their iPhone 14 base lineup. And the edges, instead of stainless steel, they can have some matte coated frame, like maybe titanium or something like that. Other than that, this phone is quite incredible. And if you have a MacBook and an AirPods and an Apple Watch, this will be your default choice. So you cannot go wrong with this. The only thing I would recommend is that you go for the 256 GB model, because I feel if you're using this phone for the for 4 to 5 years, which I bet you should use, you require at least 256 gigs of storage. So yeah, okay. That's all in this video. I recommend this phone wholeheartedly. If you are on a tight budget, I would recommend you to buy an iPhone 13 from Apple refurbished website for $620, or iPhone 13 Pro from Apple refurbished site for $850 for the same 256 GB. So yeah, that's all in this video. Thank you so much guys. I hope you liked it. Do like, share and subscribe this video, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye. Bye bye.